questions. Did Ezra intend then that second Ezra should be included in the canon? No, no. He clearly says that and he's saying 20, that the Holy Spirit told him 24, which is the 39 books that we have. But his is extra. And so it's hard for us, it was hard for me at first too. It's like, well, but if an extra biblical book tells us that the Old Testament is only 39, why would we believe it? It's not part of the 39. And if we believe it and it's real, why wouldn't it be included? It's this kind of stuff. I have friends, for instance, on the like the Reformed not charismatic, the Reformed Calvinist type side, or that kind, maybe Baptist, I don't remember. But I have some friends that actually say God only speaks through the Bible. So if you tell me God told you something, you had a dream or whatever, not possible. You're a liar, because God doesn't do that. God can't do that. And that always blows me away when I hear people saying that. It's like, God can do whatever God wants to do. Yeah, but he said he wouldn't. He did? Well, you're not supposed to add. Yeah, right. That's what we're saying. Don't add to the canon. But so we're seeing these things. So in other words, the easiest way to put it, whether you think gifts exist today or not, in the first century, we had Agabus the prophet that predicted, remember he said it, the person that owns this belt, he'll get, if he goes to up there, he's going to be put in prison. And Manias and several of the other guys, the daughters of Philip, were prophetesses. It's not recorded anything that they said or wrote a book or anything, but they gave accurate prophecy. And the gifts either still continue or stopped or whatever, but back then it was real. So you can't say that God can't speak to you because the canon is closed. So it's an interesting thing. It's just kind of sort of how we've been taught. And I think most of the denominations want to say, just don't go there, just stick with the Old and the New Testament only, because they don't want you falling prey to cults. And honestly, throughout the centuries, we have had a lot more people write fake books of Peter and Jude and Jasher and Enoch, and there's so many fake Enochs floating around. Anyway, so it would be safer if you just ignore everything and just stuck with Scripture. It really would. But we want to be mature. It'd be safer if you've never, ever picked up a knife and tried to whittle or cook food or anything. You definitely don't want a 6-year-old trying to cook food and handle knives and cut up fish and stuff. They'll kill themselves. But somewhere along the line, we want to grow up. If you're just klutzy, then maybe you should stay away from it. But most of us want to study. And so that's what we're trying to do. We judge everything by the Old and the New Testaments. So Ezra did not intend for his book, the Apocalypse, to be in the canon. And the same with Enoch and those type of things. So good question. But that doesn't mean that it's not real history or real prophecy. Or it doesn't mean that it's not, maybe even was a real prophecy, but it's been garbled. So it's just those kind of things to study. Are there any old Quaker Bibles available to be able to review Paul's epistle to the Laodiceans? I believe there are, and I think there's, I'll try to find that. I'm pretty sure I had it from seminary. I had a great seminary. I mean, we did our normal stuff, but I had professors that would say, yeah, we just studied the Bible. Now come here, I got to show you something. And so I had one professor actually wrote a book on Enoch way back when, and several other things. One of his favorite prophecies was the three-headed eagle from the Ezra Apocalypse. So I was really blessed to study with these guys, and they would immediately hit, well, I don't know if that's garbled or actually in the original book, but that can't be real because it goes against what Paul said. So really, really good seminary, in my opinion. So anyway, yes, we should be able to get those, and you could probably find them. And I actually would like to see one too, because I know I was given Laodiceans in college, but I would like to see if that's the exact same one or not. Oh, I remember where I got that. We were going through Bishop Lightfoot's Can't think of the name of that thing. Anyway, there was an Anglican minister called Lightfoot, and you probably heard of him. I mean, he's still fairly famous, 1700s, I think. Anyway, he did a series on the epistles, just commentary, and it was commentary from some Jewish sources. That's been a long time ago. But anyway, when we get to his translation and commentary of Colossians, we go all the way up. And at the end of Colossians is when they're talking about Paul's epistle to Laodicea. And he actually, if I remember correctly, he recreated it. That's not right. I'm not sure where he got. Anyway, he had it in his canon. So, that's what it was. It's been a long time. He probably got it from one of the Quaker Bibles or all, but he tried to recreate the Greek. That's what he was doing. So it's like most likely this is the Greek behind it. And so we got to study the Greek version of it. Yeah, that's a long time ago. But anyway, so yeah, we should be able to get them. And just remember that there's definitely at least one fake at the Alexandrians and one fake Laodiceans. But according to Colossians, there's at least one real, well, there's not more than one. There is a real, or was a real, epistle of Paul to Laodicea. Let's see here. I have seen several videos lately on Ezra's eagle that related to U.S. presidents as the feathers, and it lines up incredibly well, starting with Hoover. What are your thoughts on this? I would disagree. There's a lot we don't know about it, but basically we have the feathers. The main feathers are talking about the number, and it's really clear. It's the number of people that rule from the time the Roman Empire split to when the Western Roman Empire fell. And then there are these other pieces. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking it has something to do much more globally. Because if we're starting out, the whole concept is to trace the Roman Empire. So, like in Daniel's prophecy, you've got Babylon falls to the Persians fall to the Greeks fall to the Romans, and then the Romans fall, and there's these 10 toes, or these 10 nations. So we're talking about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire splits, of course, into two, and that was 395 AD. So we're going through the centuries tracing the legs of Rome, and the heads of the eagle are part of the Roman Empire, so that it's talking about. So we have one side falling in 476, Byzantine Empire falling in 1453, unless you realize that part of it can go to Russia. Russia may be part of that prophecy as far as a revived Roman Empire. And then whether that's true or not, the Byzantine Empire really was taken over and went to be Muslim instead of Christian, but the empire still kind of continued. So the Byzantine Muslim part of the empire really fell in 1917. And then we had Hitler trying to revive it in the 1940s. And then that's where we're at now. So really we have this pseudo empire. When it actually falls permanently, there should be 10 nations. And so that's what we're looking at. So in that case, Hoover and the other guys, from the last century may have something to do with like World War II and those things, but we'd have to see. It doesn't seem like it, but there's a lot that I still don't know about it. But yeah, I get a lot of stuff like that too. A lot of people try to say it's like the three heads are United States, Britain, or maybe the EU, and Russia, or stuff like that. And it depends. So we'll get it figured out, I think. The fact that we have it lets us go a step farther with prophecy. And then when we get Noah's Testament from the patriarchal writings out of the Dead Sea Scrolls that give us another major clue for end time prophecy, pulling those together really should help us to understand a few things. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I heard that there was a fragment found concerning interpretation, thunder, or lightning. Yeah, there's been a couple of those. There's a couple of them that was the one of the Gnostic versions. Matter of fact, let me see if I can get that real quick. I think there is a Gnostic version of, I think I haven't published this yet because it's probably, need to spell check it, but there is one of these in here that is the something about the thunder. Probably down here. See, like for instance here, the knowledge, or here's a book called Melchizedek. Got nothing to do with the Dead Sea Scrolls. This one's total trash because it's Gnostic work. But yeah, there's thought, three forms. Something in here is about the, see, there's one of the Adam and Eves. That's a Gnostic one. So it'd be interesting to look at that first book of Adam and Eve, compare it to the ones that are in the canon of that one Orthodox church. Is it the exact same thing? Is it totally different? My guess is it's totally different. And there's something in here, something about the, well, it doesn't matter. We can go through, we'll have this out here eventually, but there's something in here about the thunder. There might be something like a thunder or something like that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but if it is, we will pull those together. So that's one of the things we want to do next. Next week, we want to look at the books that the Bible recommends. And then eventually we want to look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, anything like that, if it's a Dead Sea Scroll. And then we want to also make a list of everything that the church fathers said that they liked or didn't like for whatever reason. So if they say this one's Gnostic, we'll throw it over there in that category. This one's the greatest thing ever. Okay, well, they liked it, so we'll put it over from there. Zelensky just kicked out the Russian Orthodox Church in the Ukraine, but kept the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Do you know the difference? It should, well, there might be a difference, but it's most likely politics. And by that, I mean, like if you went into a Ukrainian Orthodox Church or a Russian Orthodox Church or one over here, Greek Orthodox Church, they would be speaking Russian or Greek or Ukrainian or whatever. But the idea of the sacraments and what they do should be almost identical. And the whole idea would be that the Ukrainian church shouldn't do whatever Russia says. Russia shouldn't do what the Ukrainian church says. We're talking about the church government. The Assemblies of God doesn't tell the Southern Baptists what to do, and the Southern Baptists don't tell the Assemblies what to do. Should be independent. In that case, their rituals might be different, or theology slightly, But as far as I know, there's no difference. The church may or may not be corrupt in whatever one, or it could just be a matter of, and that's the thing. Suppose our churches are identical, absolutely identical, but then Russia goes to war with the Ukraine. What do you do? I mean, your brothers fighting brothers, and that's just a war situation. So I don't think there's a difference as far as the orthodoxy. Was Zacharias, dad of John the Baptist, present when Herod asked the chief priests, where would Christ be born? And did the chief priests kill Zacharias at that point? Okay. Well, it talks about Zacharias, the son of Barachias, whom they killed on the altar. I don't know if that's John the Baptist's dad or someone else. Very well could be. I mean, it's obviously not Zechariah from the Old Testament. And the ones that would have been against this would have been the Essenes, of which Zacharias and John the Baptist were. So it definitely fits. It's most likely them. As far as Zacharias being present at that point, I'm not sure. As far as the records go, Menachem was an Essene that predicted things, healed people, and he was the guy whom Herod took into when he became king. Took him and other people with him into the palace. So they were the ones that kept the scrolls and that's why he called them, where would the Christ be born? Well, Bethlehem says so. Easy. So, well, what is he? It's like, well, you know what he is. So Menachem was there. Zechariah may or may not have been. Uh, we do have a text that talks about the people that ran the school of the prophets, from Moses down to Caiaphas and Annas, who bought it. And it mentions the fact that they were no good people. Um, but the interesting thing about it is they mentioned Simeon, the one that circumcised the Lord, held the Lord in his hands. And then they mentioned it went from Simeon to Zechariah to a guy named Joseph, and then to, I think it was Joseph was the last one, but then it was confiscated or bought by Annas and Caiaphas. And the way that that stuff works is passed down father to son. So if Annas and Caiaphas, whatever they did, even if they took the temple library, they're not qualified. So we back up to Joseph. Joseph didn't have any kids. So we go from Joseph, we back up to Zechariah. Zechariah had one son in his old age, and that's John the Baptist. So you can tell by that whole conversation there that John the Baptist was the one who was the voice crying in the wilderness that would be the one to baptize Messiah. And of course, that's what happened. And in John chapter 1 or 2, John mentions that, John the Baptist was the one. So I don't know. It probably is. It would be interesting to find more information on that. We have Eusebius of ecclesiastical history, the church history, the father of church history. And he gives a lot of information like that, but I don't know that he mentions Zacharias. These are some really great questions that I don't have a clue, but it might be important. If we can find documents from them, we'll do that. When the saints come back with Christ, will they be fighting a physical war with glorified bodies? Oh, that's interesting. Men in my family are hoping so. I'd prefer to stay back and shine armor. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's a normal guy thing. I mean, these guys are corrupt. They've hurt people. You make me immortal? Give me a sword. This ought to be fun. Yeah, that's just a normal guy thing. Um, That's a good question, though. We'll definitely be immortal when we come back. We come back with him. There is a war. Maybe I would assume we'd be doing something like that. And maybe we'll be protecting people as things go by. The Lord could simply go and it would be done. But it all depends how he wants to do it. So that's something I'm not really sure. But yeah, I can see all the guys, ooh, I would like that job, please. Much like I always think the same thing in the book um, where it says that Michael was confronting with Lucifer about the body of Moses, and he dared not bring a railing accusation against him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So it's a really hard lesson to learn. Satan does not deserve or have authority for Moses' body, and Satan is a no good whatever. But that doesn't mean I'm supposed to step in and stop him. Now, on a human level, yeah, I'd step in and stop a guy from, robbing someone or hurting someone. But in that case, maybe the Lord's going to make use of it. So Michael is like, may the Lord rebuke you. And I'm going to hold my temper, And I'm just, at a certain point in Revelation, the Lord is going to tell Michael, go get him and chain him up. And I can almost hear in my mind Michael's reaction. Yes, sir. I have been waiting up for this for centuries. My pleasure. Excuse me. And he's going to enjoy every minute of it if he's got emotions like we have. But I can just see that kind of thing going on. Most Bible scholars believe the crucifixion happened in AD 30, but the Essenes believe it happened in 32. Is there more evidence for the Essenes' view? Well, one of the things is that there's a prophecy in Daniel about a certain event, and then so many days and the Messiah is cut off. And I'm going to need to do a good study of that. We've got it in our book, Ancient Prophecies Revealed, but it's also been taught by Chuck Missler and several of the other guys in the last century, and then several other guys the last couple of centuries. And that comes out to be the crucifixion being April 6, 32 AD. So it's interesting that that comes out that way. The basic chronology, the way I've always done it, and the way the Seder does it, except for that little mess up that they have in Persia, it comes out to be 32 AD. So you've got the Seder, you've got basic chronology, depending on how you do it. Then you've got the Dead Sea Scroll 11Q13 that tells us that. And so it's, I think there's a good amount of evidence. Now, maybe we're looking at the calendar wrong and we've shifted it. So maybe it should be 30 or 31 or 32. Some people say 33. But we're right there in that ballpark. So I just thought it's really interesting. If we're trying to base a prophecy on it, it would be really nice to know for sure the exact year, preferably the exact year and day. But in either case, we can still get the season. If it's supposed to be so many years and it's either 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, somewhere in that 5-year period, we can, do something with it. So yeah, I think there is a good amount of that. And that's another thing too. Let me pull this up one more time here. So when we do our, again in our app, we're going to have one of the things we have in here is we got Dead Sea Scrolls, but we're going to have a Dead Sea Scroll calendar. And that will eventually have about the 7,000-year cycle when they altered the timeline, all the history from the Seder about that and everything, mapping out the ages. So we'll see how the years, the Shemitahs, the Jubilees, the centuries, the Onas, the ages, how they all fit together. And we'll pull some stuff from the Old and the New Testament to kind of show you that it's all the same stuff. And then we get the calendar really well. And we go to places like 11Q13 that says the event when the Messiah fixes everything is going to be one Shemitah after the end of the 9th Jubilee of that Ona. And the Onas are 500-year periods, so you know which Ona you're in. That's easy. And so if you're in the 10th Jubilee, it's 9 full Jubilees and then one Shemitah into it. That's 7 years past the mark. And so that comes up to be 32. Unless we're trying to recreate the calendar, so we could be off a year, but we'll see. Have you heard anything about the temple discovered in Jerusalem in the old city of David that supposedly was run by Melchizedek when Abraham met him there? No, I haven't. I haven't heard anything about it. You have to shoot me a link or something about that. That would be interesting. I don't care so much where it was, but if there's anything written on the walls or any kind of parchment, or that's the kind of stuff we'd be interested in. Okay, thank you. $20 donation. Thank you very much. Every bit helps. Have you heard something about something called Paleo-Hebrew? Yeah, Hebrew is from the time of the Babylonians forward, which is basically the 600s. We have normal Hebrew. It's called block strip Hebrew. It's basically, they're all kind of squares with, just the modern Hebrew is pretty much the same from that time forward. Well, before that, there was Paleo-Hebrew. That's what you'll see in the scrolls. It's not a cursive, but it's just a different kind. I don't know if I have any examples of Paleo-Hebrew. Anyway, but you go back several centuries before Paleo-Hebrew, you get Proto-Hebrew. And so that's why it's really interesting to kind of see the difference. So the curse tablet, for instance, that was found at Joshua's altar is not written in Paleo-Hebrew, it's written in Proto-Hebrew. And that's very obvious. But that means that object had to be around 1500 BC. So these people that are trying to say, well, the Exodus, even if it ever happened at all, there's no evidence, but it must have happened somewhere around the 1200s. Well, that's why there's no evidence. You're looking 3 centuries too late. And this proves that somebody was there that built Joshua's altar, that wrote a cursed tablet, and part of it is identical to Joshua 8, I think, or part of the Old Testament, the curses. And so, but it's written in the type of Hebrew. It has to be 14th century. Okay, so, and it's interesting. It may have been dropped by somebody using it a century or two later, but it's Proto-Hebrew for that site. So whoever put that together was Jewish, knew Joshua chapter 8, that is, and wrote it in that style. So that puts us back in that. So that's the archaeology and the history people are kind of going nuts saying that can't be. Yeah, well, but it is. And that's exactly the chronology that the Bible, Jasher, the Seder, and these other things give us. So not the Septuagint version. It's kind of interesting, but the Hebrew version. So yeah, Paleo Hebrew is interesting. And well, as a matter of fact, just a second here. If we go to our, let's see here, going up charts again, we have, see, so here's Joshua. So there's the curse tablet and a recreation of that. That's the kind of thing that's Proto-Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew is quite a bit different. Okay, so I don't have anything else there, but yeah, it's just the difference in stuff, the way everything is written. Do you believe the stories in Enoch about the family background? Also, the flight or the fight of Esau and Nimrod. It seems to fit very well. I know there's other people that have come up with the idea that Nimrod was killed by a boar, and they're tying all of the legends together. And if you don't have any written text, that's about the best you can do. But I would think this is more logical. Now, some of them will contradict, so not scripture, but I know there's a story in Jubilees that is totally different than the story in Jasher. So which one's correct? Good question. So, but it's interesting. I would definitely look at it. I'm not sure about the family background that you're talking about, but the fight between Esau and Nimrod. Yeah, I would assume it's correct. I've got it on our timelines and stuff. And it does tend to fit, I think. I believe I read somewhere that the book of Enoch was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, inserted right before the book of Job. Well, there was no Bible canon type thing like that. There are fragments of like Deuteronomy and Psalms and this and that, and sometimes they'll be, tacked together. So there's no Bible though that had like 10 or 20 or 30 Bible books all together. No ancient Bible like that. But fragments of all of those were there. Fragments of every Bible book except for Esther was found, and that's led some people to say maybe Esther's not supposed to be in the Old Testament. Well, fragments of all of them except Esther, but then they say the same thing that the Ezra Apocalypse says. The whole idea about the public canon being 24 books. So if they have the same number of books in their Old Testament, and they have all of the books and the pieces that they have are word perfect, we just haven't found the one book. If it wasn't Esther, it would have been something else. So that pretty much proves that Esther should be in there. But no, there's no thing like that yet. Anyway, I'm hopeful. Could the saints seen under the altar be Christians that die from Mystery Babylon before the rapture? Um, Interesting thought. Yeah. Because I think it was one of the guys, I think it was, anyway, one of the theories was that when you look at the saints under the altar, they say, when are we going to be avenged? And It says white robes were given to them, and they were told to just wait until it says something like the rest of their brethren and something are killed. And so that makes it sound like there's three separate persecutions, either during the first part of the tribulation or right before or whatever, but somewhere along the line. So some of it's going to deal with Mystery Babylon, I think, and some of it with the Antichrist. But it's interesting because the Bible doesn't have anything that's accidental like that. If it says you were martyred, you need to wait until this group and then the rest of your brethren are martyred. So I suppose that group and my brethren, if that group's not my brethren, they could be martyred together, like Christians and Jews or something like that. But it seems like there's at least one more, maybe two more martyrs or persecutions after that. So yeah, we need to try to put that together. There's been a lot of speculation on that with gaps and stuff, and it's a possibility. I don't have a strong opinion though on it. What do you think about the view that Ephraim and Manasseh represent Great Britain and the US? I've heard stuff like that before. We'd have to look at the prophecy and see who we're looking at, but um, it sounds kind of fishy. There's been several groups that have done that kind of thing, like the Seventh Day Adventist. Wait a minute, is that the right one? I think it is. Anyway, groups like that. I always, in my mind, I get Seventh Day Adventists and um, Christian Science for whatever reason confused, but I think it's Seventh Day Adventists that they were saying something like the beasts in Daniel and the metal images and that kind of stuff represent Great Britain. And they did a good job because they talked about the bear being Russia. The bear is a symbol for Russia. The lion is a symbol for Great Britain, and an eagle is a symbol for United States. So they were putting it like eagle's wings, and that's Russia. And the symbols kind of fit, but again, where would that be? And Daniel tells us the outline, and then we have more information from the Testament of Noah. So we need to pull that stuff together. So I don't know. We'd have to know more about it. Why would they think it represents them, and what time frame they're kind of talking about? I've never rode a horse. Between the Bema seat, wedding supper, and the reception after, we are going to have time to learn how to ride. Are we going to? Yeah. Good question. That would be interesting. I know L.A. Marzulli talks a lot about what he's going to do with his horse when he gets up there. So anyway, Satan wanted Moses' body so he couldn't come back in the tribulation. Possibly. Yeah, we did see Moses and Elijah at the Mount of Transfiguration. So that probably tells us something. It's really interesting. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop there for tonight. Next.